What is going on, everyone, and welcome to WreckTalk. We're going to do the preview a little bit differently today. We got the whiteboard out. We got our nice watch. We got our nice shirt. I need something to be happy about. Jackets haven't been playing well. Let's preview this game first. Let's look at the stats, baby. Curious to me, number one thing that kind of doesn't make sense to me on this board, Miami only an 11-point favorite over Georgia Tech. Now, Georgia Tech didn't score an offensive touchdown against Virginia Tech, held to only 6 points. Virginia Tech has a good defense. They're not some world beater defense, though. Georgia Tech's offense has struggled mightily since the exit of Haynes King. Now, if you ask Tech fans, it seems like everyone and their brother seems to think Haynes King is going to come back this week. Brent Key in the press conference today said it's day-to-day. It's going to be a game-time decision. What I can tell you, anytime a coach tells you it's a game-time decision, they're lying to you. They know who's going to be starting the game, right? If I had to guess, I'd say it's going to be Haynes King. Based on this line, no one knows more about who's starting, the ins and outs of these programs, more than the people that set these betting lines. No one has more at stake than the people setting these betting lines. Also, kind of a low over-under for the line to me, 63.5. So I guess they're projecting like a, I don't know what kind of final score they're projecting. Maybe like a 50-something to 40-something or 40-something to 30-something. We'll have to see. But let's look at the stats. What do they tell us? No surprise with Miami. Hands down, the best offense in the country. Scoring offense, number one in the country. That's what the N and the A is nationally and in the ACC. Number one scoring offense in the country, number one scoring offense in the ACC. Rushing yards, they're 35th nationally, 5th in the ACC, so they haven't been as explosive on the ground. They can be at times. They're explosive in the pass game, though, first in the ACC and third nationally. Total offensive yards, first nationally, first in the ACC. Here's the thing for Georgia Tech. You're not gonna keep them from any explosive plays, right? Like Restrepo, George, like those guys are going to get their yardage in. Cam Ward's going to get his yardage in. Cam Ward's going to get some rushing yards in on you probably and evade and do stuff. We'll talk about it later, but you got to limit the frequency that happens, but you're not going to shut down this Miami offense. There's too much talent with Cam Ward, Restrepo, George that I talked about. They got a stable of running backs. They have a very good offensive line. And even when the offensive line fails, they've got a quarterback that can make things happen with his feet. Defense, a little bit different story. 63rd nationally in passing yards allowed, 6th in the ACC. Rushing yards, way, way better. A team that's very, very good at stopping the run, 8th nationally, 2nd in the ACC. And I believe, is SMU the number one ranked rushing defense in the country or in the conference? They might be. So not good news for Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's been far worse throwing the ball than they have running the ball, though they've struggled there too. Let's go look at Georgia Tech. Passing yards, not very good. 55th nationally, 12th in the ACC. Rushing yards, about the same. I'm not going to read them all off. The big thing here, scoring offense, 72nd in the country, 6th in the ACC. That's got to change for this game, and that's got to change in a big way. Now, the defensive numbers are, to me, a tad bit deceptive for Georgia Tech. Yes, we have been very bad as a whole on the season, stopping the pass, 59th ranked nationally, 5th in the ACC. But they've been way better lately in like their past 2 games. They've played very near lights out defense. Rushing yards, 27th. Rushing yards allowed, 27th. Nationally, 3rd in the ACC. So what stats pop out to me as being crucially important in this game? Number one for Miami is going to be the pass defense. That's something Georgia Tech is going to have to find a way to exploit, even though they've been pretty bad at it, especially since Haynes King has been out. And the other thing, Georgia Tech's got to find a way to put points on the board in this game. These two things right here jump out at me as being crucially important in this game. Now, Let's talk about keys to victory. What do these teams need to do to win this game? First, let's talk about Miami. I think one key for Miami, get ahead early, hit your explosive plays early, and really put this out of reach for Georgia Tech really by the end of the third or by the middle of the third quarter. You could probably, if you get ahead by 3 scores before the end of the third, this game's probably out of reach for Georgia Tech. They just don't have the horses to overcome that, and Miami does. Number 2, I think you've got to be aggressive on defense. Now, we've talked about it. It's likely Haynes King starts, but you could see Philo or Pyron. Pyron has struggled a bit in his past 2 starts. He played well in the first half against Notre Dame, not so well toward the end, but that game was kind of out of reach for us anyways. Did not play well against Virginia Tech. Philo came in, threw for like over 200 yards in a quarter. That doesn't change the game plan for Miami, though. You're either going to get kind of a gimpy Haynes King, Zach Pyron that struggled, or a true freshman in Aaron Philo. You want to be aggressive. You don't want any of these quarterbacks for Georgia Tech. Hey, there's ESPN. You don't want any of these quarterbacks for Georgia Tech getting super comfortable and turning the tide with the passing game and staying in this game. Georgia Tech is playing with house money here against a 5th-ranked, is it 5th-ranked Miami? 4th-ranked Miami. No one's giving Georgia Tech much of a chance in this game. The longer you let Georgia Tech stay in this, the worse and worse that's going to be for Miami. Also, Georgia Tech dying for that 6th win. This means way more to Georgia Tech than it does Miami. Miami could lose this game, still win the ACC, and still make a playoff appearance. So be aggressive on defense, get ahead early. 3, you got to drill them with explosive plays. That really goes into getting ahead early, but I do think you could take the will to win out of Georgia Tech here if you're hitting 50-yard touchdown throws, especially after maybe an explosive Georgia Tech play. Be explosive on offense like you have all year. For Georgia Tech, we've talked about it. They need to stay in this game with the passing game. Whatever you need to do, throw the previous playbook out for a game. You've got to find a way to scheme up getting your playmakers, Eric Singleton Jr., Malik Rutherford. Who else? Who else has been good for us? Avery Boyd at tight end. You got to scheme up a way to get your playmakers the ball. And I'm going to go ahead and write it here for Georgia Tech. I don't want to see 14,000 screen passes. I'm not saying you can't do it. Miami on defense is going to be way too physical on corner. They're going to be expecting that. They're going to blow up that behind the line of scrimmage there. You're going to have to beat them throwing it over the top and across the middle. Avery Boyd would be a good choice for that. Looking at you, Buster Faulkner. Number 2, you're going to have to play near perfect defense and get creative. Now, you're not going to hold, Miami to like less than to like 17 points or something. You're not going to hold them to 2 scores. You've got to limit the explosive plays. You have to get Cam Ward a little bit off his game, and you have to get Miami playing the type of offense you want them to play, meaning you need to force them to run the ball more. Now, here's what Georgia Tech's not going to be able to do. You're not just going to be able to play press man coverage the whole time. Miami's way too athletic at wide receiver for that. So you're going to have to get creative there too, but you're going to have to limit the explosive plays. In fact, we'll hold off to that. Number 3, how do underdogs win games that they're underdogs in, especially when no one thinks they can, when you're out-talented by a good bit? Turnovers and special teams. Georgia Tech's going to have to get some turnovers in this game, and those turnovers have to result in points. You can't get a turnover in plus territory and it not equate to any points. I think you're going to have to flip field on special teams. You need to get to the other side of the 50 on a kick return. You need to get to the other side of the 50 on a big punt return for 40 yards. Hit all your something like that. But these 2 things are probably the most important in turning over these. I mean, it's hard to say between staying in the game with passing and that. You're going to have to do all of this, though, right? You're going to have to do all of this. Now, What is the minimum number of points that a Georgia Tech offense who has struggled this year needs to score? I think an absolute minimum. Georgia Tech is going to have to score 35 points on offense. I don't see you holding Miami to under a little over a score a quarter. They're going to score at least once a quarter. They're going to average a little better than that. Georgia Tech has to score more than 35 points, I think, to win this game. Not looking great if they have to do that, but I think that to be the case. What is the key stat to victory? So I like to do this on all my previews. Let me erase this real quick. What I like to imagine is if I could have a stat transported from the future that isn't the final score, what stat would tell me who wins this game? I think it is, and people might call me crazy, it's passing yards for Georgia Tech. If Georgia Tech can throw for like 300 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, that's going to open up the run for them against a very good run defense. I think that tells me Georgia Tech has a very good shot at winning this game if they can get their pass game going. So, very tough game for Georgia Tech. Let's just get into final score predictions. What's my final score prediction? I've gotten out of the business of doing this. For me, Georgia Tech's got to prove something in this game that they can get something together offensively before I'm going to say they're going to be able to do it. I do think this game probably gets out of hand by mid-third quarter, like we talked about earlier. I think Miami wins this game 48, and I think Georgia Tech puts up 28. So that's my final score prediction. Miami 48-28. Now, if you're a Tech fan, you're probably saying, man, you're way down on Georgia Tech. I am at the moment. When I haven't seen any modicum of offense, even as well as your defense has played, this is a game that's going to require you to play very good offensive football. Georgia Tech has got to prove that they can do that. They were struggling to do that even with Haynes King at times. So Georgia Tech has to come out in this game and prove they can put lots of points on the board offensively, and they can maintain that level of defense they have up to, the last 2 games of the season or so far. So let me know what you guys think. If you're a Miami fan, do you agree with those points? Do you disagree? If you're a Georgia Tech fan, the same. Let me know in the comments. You guys have a good one.